On my last video, I made a bread from the Re-enactor's Cookbook by Allyson Szabo. It is the No Knead Bread, but I didn't show how to make it. So now I'm going to go ahead and make another loaf of bread and give you the directions. Here is the recipe. It uses 3 cups of flour, 1 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of yeast, 1 to 2 teaspoons salt, I use 2, and 1 1/2 cups of hot water. Add the 1.5 cups of warm water. It's not hot, but it's not cold. It should feel warm to the touch, about 104 to 110 degrees. You want to use warm water so that it activates the yeast, but if it's too hot, it can kill the yeast. Then sprinkle the yeast on the top, spreading it around. Let the yeast sit in the warm water. Add the 3 cups of bread flour to the yeast and water mix. That's 1 cup. Stir it up. You can add the salt at this time as well. With the 3 cups of flour in, it will make a batter type dough. After a few minutes of mixing, the dough is pretty stiff but sticky. And now we're going to let it rest for 3 hours, covering it with a damp cloth. It's been 3 hours now, and so I'm going to pull the dough out and do the folding. So this didn't rise a whole lot. I'm going to put some flour on the surface of this, and then some flour on the tabletop, and pop it out. At this point, we knead the dough by folding it. So this is not a traditional kneading type of bread. This is called the No Knead Bread because you don't need to knead it. And instead, it's folded. Put a little more flour on the surface. And then about a dozen folds on the bread. So here's one, folding it in half, spreading it out. Maybe a little more flour. It's not too sticky, so it actually is probably okay. Fold 2, different direction. Spread it long ways. And fold 3. Fold 4. Got 12 folds on it. Do one more and roll it up into a ball. Now the last one I did cook in a Dutch oven on parchment paper like the book says. And I cooked it over coals with coals on top and the bottom of the Dutch oven. This time I am going to put it in my new oven. And so I'm not going to put it in the Dutch oven because it's an enclosed clay oven. And I'm going to just cook it on a greased cast iron griddle. Now we're going to let this rise for another 35 minutes while we get the oven going with coals. So here's my fish oven, and I've got the coals going in it. Nice and red and hot. In the center there, 450, should be plenty hot to bake the bread. Goes right in the middle with coals all the way around it. The oven is about 400 degrees on the inside, and the bread is just beginning to brown. It's going to be in here for about 25 minutes, and then it's actually flipped upside down and cooked for another 20 minutes or so. After the first 25 minutes, I turn the bread upside down, and we'll let it bake for a little bit longer upside down, and make sure that the bottom is cooked as well. After taking the bread out of the oven, you still want to let it cool off before cutting into it. The insides will continue baking during that time. This bread has a nice crispy crust and a soft crumb, and is very delicious, and according to the Re-enactor's cookbook is very similar to what they would have eaten in medieval times.